Hi, welcome to my channel. If you don't know me, I'm Ruth and I've got an annoying top on. I have got a 20-month-old little boy and I am 31 weeks pregnant with the next one, and we don't know the sex. Having a surprise like we had a surprise as well with Jet, our first one. Had like a cold and stuff over Christmas and I totally lost my voice. I'm putting off filming in this new year because I was waiting for my voice to feel better, but it's just not coming back, so I'm just gonna carry on with life. This is maybe just the new me. I filmed a birth video all about my birth story with Jet. It touched a lot on the hypnobirthing side. I used hypnobirthing for my labour, so obviously that was like a big part, but I didn't go into great detail about hypnobirthing in particular. I just mentioned that I used it, and then quite a lot of people have asked just for me to talk in a bit more detail about my experiences with it, so I thought I'd do that because I am a massive hypnobirthing fan. I'm a hypnobirthing kino. So I remember the first times I heard anything about hypnobirthing was my sister's friend used it when she had her baby, and I remember I just thought it sounded really, I'll bring you in a bit closer just so we can really chat. I remember thinking that it sounded really hippie and kind of airy-fairy and out of this world, and like that you'd need to be in a trance. It would all be about kind of like taking you away from yourself, and I just didn't like the sound of it at all, so I just kind of judged it from afar. When I was pregnant, I think you just suddenly start realizing, irrelevant of what my opinion is of birth, I am still going to have to do it. Now this baby's in there, there's only one way for it to come out. I just wanted to feel like I'd kind of considered all my options so that I knew that I was going into the birth equipped in the best way possible. I think it was actually Giovanna Fletcher did a YouTube video just briefly talking about her hypnobirthing. I think her little boy is a few months older than Jet. I think that's what really reminded me about it. I thought I'd look into it, and so I got a book. I'll just get the book to show you. Oh, don't mind me. So, the Hypnobirthing Book, where's the author? By Catherine Graves. When I was about 29 weeks pregnant, me and Henry went on holiday to Hawaii. I took this with me and I read it that holiday, and I read it through twice and just completely loved it. I just fell in love with the idea of hypnobirthing. I love Catherine Graves as well, particularly the way she explains it. It's just a really easy readable book, but you feel like you're learning so much. I asked on Instagram, this isn't like a Q&A, but I just thought I'd ask if there's any particular questions that anyone had, just so I could include them. So it's Rachel Schultz on Instagram. She asked, did you feel like buying the book was enough? And did you purchase any additional meditations or things to listen to? I totally feel like the book was enough. The book was all I used. I didn't do any classes or any one-on-one sessions or anything. I just read the book. And actually the book comes with a little CD that has some like relaxation exercises where she reads through some relaxation meditation type stories and exercises. I just want to say a disclaimer that I am definitely not a hypnobirthing expert. I know nothing about hypnobirthing other than what I read and then my own personal experience with using it. But for me, if I had to explain hypnobirthing, what I would say is that it is connecting your mind and your body and using them together for a positive experience, and using your mind to positively influence your body and the physical effects on your body. So for example, when you are told something that maybe makes you feel a bit embarrassed, you blush. And so the embarrassment is a feeling, is a mental state, but it has an influence on you physically. It's just an example of how your mental state and your physical state are really combined. And so hypnobirthing is very similar, where your body physically is going through this like incredible ordeal. You can control your mental state to have an effect on you physically. So for example, if you're stressed and you've got adrenaline running through your body, it can make your stomach tighten because your stomach feels stressed, and the adrenaline adds to that, and your body gets kind of like tighter and tighter. With contractions, your body is already tightening, and so you want to be able to loosen and relax and calm your body as much as possible to make the contractions as less overwhelming as possible. So you want to have some exercises ready to help your mental state stay calm, so that the adrenaline doesn't take over, so that your body can stay nice and supple while the contractions are happening. So it just feels quite obvious, really. It's basically stay calm and the labour will be better and more positive. And that is exactly what I found. It also talks about how birth is like running a marathon, and no one would go into a marathon without training. And if you do, you're kind of asking for disaster. And birth is the exact same thing. You're about to put your body through the most challenging physical challenge it will ever have been through. And so to go into that without having done any training would just be a bit silly. The Hypnobirthing book is the training, and so every evening, like I said, we do these exercises. I just felt like it was just a really nice chance to really kind of acknowledge the pregnancy, acknowledge the baby. Life can be so busy. We were decorating this new house at the time, and so we were really busy and preoccupied. I was trying to fit in last bits of work, and it was just really nice to have those like 10-15 minutes every evening just to kind of stop and come together and think about the baby and just start thinking about the labour in a really positive way. Anyway, I've gone off on such a tangent, but let me just double check the other questions. Letty Love said, did you do any face-to-face group or one-on-one groups, or just online or a book? So yeah, anyway, as I said, yeah, I just used the book. I didn't do anything else. Lindsay C83 said, I watched your first video and wondered if you'd recommend the book you mentioned, or if you've read any others. Oh yeah, again, sorry, I just read this one. I didn't read any others, and I would highly recommend it, and I'll link it in the description box below. Emily Evat1 said, did you actively push during your second phase, or did you just breathe the baby out? Quickly do a tangent before I come back to that answer, but one thing I found with hypnobirthing, I'm gonna put the book down now, just hold it forever, is that she, in this book particularly, in the Hypnobirthing book, she really educates you on what's actually physically happening in labour, and that there's a few stages, and she just talks all about what's actually physically happening. Like, for example, it's incredible. Again, I'm so aware that I don't really know what I'm talking about. I don't need to think that I'm some sort of hypnobirthing expert, but again, from what I understood from the book, I thought was really clever, that she basically says that your uterus, I don't know why I'm doing that, your uterus while you're pregnant is loose around the top and tight at the bottom. Loose at the top so that it can keep growing and expanding with the baby, and tight at the bottom to hold the baby in. And then your contractions in that first stage of labour are those two things swapping roles. So the top starts tightening and contracting to push the baby down, and the bottom starts loosening and opening to allow the baby out. And that, for your body, feels really bizarre. If you have adrenaline and you have panic in you, then your body will try and fight that, because it just feels like it feels wrong. It feels like your body has been so used to it being one way round for the whole pregnancy. Then if you get panicked and stressed, your body will tighten, and it will make it so much harder for your cervix to open, or whatever the professional term is, because of the stress. Your body's kind of holding on to itself. But again, it's so easy just to say, oh, just relax and stay calm and everything will be easier. But to actually understand kind of the anatomy of it and what's actually happening really helped me understand why I needed to be calm, and why I needed to keep my breathing controlled to allow my cervix to be doing what it needed to be doing. And the last thing you want is to get in the way of your own body, because you want the labour to be as, you know, efficient as possible. I think often my main fear is just the fear of the unknown. And for me, that book meant I felt like I was going into labour really knowledgeable about what actually happens in labour, why there's no need to be scared, why you can understand then that your body knows exactly what it's doing, your body is in control, and the instincts of your body are just incredible. And just to kind of trust that you do know what you're doing, and as long as you can just control your mental state, then the physical side will take care of itself. So I did all the exercises in the build-up. By the time I was going into labour, I just felt really excited. She talks about it really positively, like this challenge that your body's going to take on, and I felt really excited just to try it and to see what happens and to see what it's like to give birth to a child. And so when I went into labour, I didn't panic. If your waters break, not to just rush into hospital. You contact the hospital if your waters break first, but you don't need to kind of panic and think that your labour's starting and waste a lot of energy getting stressed about it and getting panicked, and just to kind of conserve as much energy as you can, knowing that it's probably going to be a long process, especially if it's your first baby. So when I started going into labour, I just tried to do things that I really enjoyed, things that make me happy, having some nice vanilla candles lit, watching Friends. She also talks about how comedy is really important, because when you laugh, the endorphins that you release are really good for your body and really good for that emotional state. So we watched a lot of comedy and sitting on the birthing ball and just keeping it all really calm. We phone triage a lot, which is the number they give you that's just there 24/7 for any help you need on the labour ward. Just keeping them up to date with where we were at so that they could put our minds at ease that we were doing the right thing. I didn't use any of the actual spoken exercises of hypnobirthing for those first few hours. Well, you can hear all this. I've done a labour story, so you can hear it all, but the Tuesday was the whole day where I'd say I was in labour, and I didn't actually use any of the exercises, but I think I'd read the book so much and done the exercises beforehand, I felt like they were kind of in me anyway, and I just generally felt calm and in control. Oh, actually also, another thing I'd say that's so important is your birthing partner, whoever that is, having read the book too, because Henry had read the book, he'd obviously done the exercises with me, and that made all the difference in the world for me when I was in the moment. Because when you're in the moment and the contractions are coming really thick and fast, and you start doubting yourself and you start thinking, how can I cope with this amount of pressure? How am I gonna fit a baby out of me? And how are we gonna get to the hospital? And all these things that start, it's, you know, your body just naturally does want to panic. Hypnobirthing is obviously counteracting that. What was amazing for me is in those moments where I was at risk of really panicking, Henry also had the tools, and he was completely my rock throughout the whole birth. And I find it quite sad sometimes, the joke about how husbands or partners or whoever they are, the men of the birth, how the men just get in the way a bit and are a bit of a waste of space. I don't think they're given enough credit, and actually Henry for me was, yeah, like I said, he was just my absolute rock. He saw me through that birth. I couldn't have done it without him. But that is thanks to the fact that he had read the hypnobirthing, and I think he would have been really scared. Well, he then later on said that he was scared, but he just managed to hide it well. But he had the tools that hypnobirthing had given him to help me through. She also talks about pain relief and all those other interventions. It's so personal, but for me, when I read it, it made me feel like, okay, I want to try and do this birth as naturally as possible with no intervention, and just get a chance to experience what my body can actually do. Like, I just was quite intrigued. What am I actually capable of? Am I really capable of this incredibly difficult task? And so I read more about water births. I had an injury when I was a bit younger. I had a bad back, and I found that having baths were incredible. When I say I had an injury, basically I fell off a horse, but it was very embarrassing because the horse wasn't even moving. I just got on the horse and then fell off the other side and winded myself and really hurt my back. Anyway, baths really helped. And then obviously with your period pains, I find just that heat and the water just really lifts the pain. And obviously you feel weightless in water, which I felt like in labour might be really helpful to not feel heavy. Anyway, so that was my main thing. And obviously with your preparations for labour, you don't want to hold on to anything too tightly, because you know that anything could happen. I might have needed to ended up having a cesarean, or who knows what might happen. That was what I was hoping for. And because the labour had then gone really nice and smoothly, I was then able to have a water birth. And I cannot explain how incredible the water was for lifting the pain. And so, well, I feel like I'm all over the place in this video. There's just so many thoughts in terms of talking about the pain of birth. I personally wouldn't describe it as painful. I would just say it is incredibly intense. Contractions make your stomach just feel like it's like a rock and that your ribs are gonna crack. And so it is incredibly intense, and you're pushed to your very limit of what you can bear. But it's not a pain in terms of a really negative thing. I think it feels really positive because you're really aware that every contraction you're having is taking you one step closer to your baby. And it is hard, and that's why you need all these exercises to be able to see you through. I'm not saying it's easy, but I wouldn't say it's just this horrible pain that you want to numb. Like for me, I liked being able to feel what was happening, because then I really felt in control. And I think if I'd had an epidural or something, I would have felt like I suddenly wasn't in control of my own body. But the water was enough just to kind of soften and slightly dull that feeling of each contraction. And so in the final stage, in terms of pushing, again, I've only had my one experience. Now that I've had my one experience, I'm intrigued what happens with the next one. But for me, I can't fathom a birth where they tell you when to push, because I had no control over the pushing. So basically I was in the water and the contractions come to an end, and there's this really bizarre moment where your whole body just kind of pauses for a moment. Sorry, I'm so aware that my throat and nose must just sound awful in this video. There's this moment where your whole body just pauses and this new stage starts, and then I can't even explain to you just craziness of the pushing. I would say I pushed. Again, I talk about this in my birth video, but basically the best way I could describe it is like being sick, where something happens in your stomach and you can feel it coming and you know you're going to be sick and you couldn't really stop it even if you wanted to, but you have to kind of open your mouth and allow yourself to be sick. And for me, the pushing was like that. Every kind of few minutes maybe, I was so unaware of what time it was. I was just totally in my own world. But I'd say every few minutes, my whole body would just have this urge, and it would just like take over me and wash down through my body and then just push with all its might. I then was just trying to breathe to kind of keep it manageable. And so I can't imagine someone telling me to push, because I couldn't have stopped that push. And then in between those moments, a push would have just felt really pointless, because in between the pushes, your body just goes totally back to neutral and you don't have any pain or contractions or anything. You just feel really calm. I feel like I've rambled, and I don't know if this video is going to really make much sense, so I'm really sorry. For me, I really judged hypnobirthing. I thought it was going to be really bizarre. I just think it transformed my birth. I think my birth experience was really positive, hard, full on, pushed my body to every limit, but was positive, and I didn't feel scared of what I was going to go through. I felt really equipped and really prepared. I've just seen that Henry and Jet have just come home, so now I'm really distracted. Hold on. Sorry. Henry and Jet just got back from the park, both completely covered in mud. For me, I would just say that hypnobirthing is an amazing way of just equipping you to feel in control and educated about what's actually happening in your body. There's so many unknowns, but I just felt like I went in feeling like whatever happened, I understood what was going on. And I think as well, it helped me really realise that obviously the midwives know what they're doing, and midwives are incredible, and my midwife was just the loveliest thing, but also that it is your body, and it kind of helped me just feel confident in knowing that I needed to trust my body and trust that although they know medically what's happening, only you know the feelings that you're having. And so just to really kind of stand your ground if there's something that you think really strongly, just to feel like you're in control, that there's no need for it to be a scary experience at all. She talks a lot about things that they offer you in the hospital. So there's like a vitamin K injection that they offer the baby, an injection they offer you for the placenta to be birthed after the baby. And she just talks about what each of those things actually are, what they do, the side effects they have on your body, and doesn't say if you should or shouldn't have it, but just tells you what they actually are, so that in the moment when you've just given birth and you're feeling really overwhelmed and someone says, do you want this injection, you actually really know what it is, and you can then say yes or no, and knowing what it is you're saying yes or no to. Anyway, I've waffled on for way too long. I'm really sorry if this was just ridiculously waffly, but I hope that's helped in a small way if you are expecting. I think as well, people love to tell their quite scary stories of birth. And for me, I found it really helpful in those last few months and weeks of pregnancy to just avoid those conversations. And if people started trying to tell me some kind of crazy story, I just would say, actually, do you know what, I'm really sorry, but I don't want to hear that. And it felt rude at first. You need to be protecting yourself, protecting your mental state before you go into birth, and you don't need to hear things like that. If you are pregnant, your birth can be the most empowering thing. I think once I had given birth to Jet, I just felt so empowered. And I remember walking down the street afterwards and seeing other women with pushchairs being like, you are amazing. Well done you. You gave birth to a human. What an achievement. What an incredible achievement. However it goes, whatever the birth ends up being, at the end of it, you're going to have a baby, and that is all that matters. And the hypnobirthing for me is just a way of trying to get the journey to that baby to be as positive as possible. Thank you so much for watching. Please do subscribe for your pregnancy update next week of my 32-week pregnancy update. But yeah, do subscribe. We do vlogs and family things and pregnancy stuff, and yeah, get involved. Comment below with any of your hypnobirthing stories, or if you've got other books or courses that you did, I'd love to know. Have a lovely week. Lots of love. Peace out.